错的黑夜手一盏孤灯。
A netizen shared this picture, which was widely circulating on Chinese social media back in 2019. But what's described here actually does fit the current state of living that many ordinary Chinese people are experiencing now, in particular amid the pandemic. The picture shows the lyrics of a very popular Chinese song among young children in China. Initially, it was stated that the child found 1 cent near the street. However, it has been changed into the child found 1 yuan on the street. This post, which has gone viral, noted that we were able to tolerate the rising costs of housing and pork, but upon seeing the change in the lyrics of this song from 1 cent to 1 yuan, we are truly devastated. A netizen shared a screenshot of this article published in Chinese media, which said that local party officials and community leaders paid visits to residents amid this particularly difficult time. These officials brought rice, oil, nuts, meat, and many other goods to these residents as one of the gestures to extend good wishes for the new year. They also reminded the residents to contact them at any time whenever they have questions or are met with challenges. The end of the paragraph noted that in total, these officials visited over 500 low-income households. A netizen shared a more clear version of the picture and said, netizens have questioned the decoration and setting of this house. Doesn't at all appear that the resident is a member of the low-income community. In particular, as seen in the picture on the right, bottles of Maotai, also known as the national liquor in China, which are very expensive and ordinary Chinese people rarely have access to. All of these signs have raised questions among netizens as to whether this article is true or simply propaganda by the Communist Party. It was said that officials claimed that these Maotai as seen in the picture did not contain liquor in them at all. They were just empty bottles that were picked up and collected by these poor local residents, and they were used solely for the purpose of decoration. A netizen replied, it was said that even the bottles of Maotai, if sold, can be exchanged for a fair amount of money. Why didn't the so-called poor residents sell them for profit after picking them up? A netizen shared this picture showing that a few decades back in China, Maotai was served on the airplane. A netizen replied, the reason behind this is that all those who were able to afford the costs of airplane tickets, in particular back then, were either Communist Party officials or members affiliated with the political elite. A Chinese netizen shared about Xinjiang and said, once when I was visiting Xinjiang as a tourist, I was trying to share a file with my friend via cloud storage, but then I realized that the service was inaccessible, as the file cannot be transferred. A netizen shared, my friend was one of the students who were mandated to go to Xinjiang to support the so-called development of China's western regions as part of a countrywide program. He told me that even though on the surface they were ordered to help the poor, but in reality they were there to monitor the local residents, to see if anyone was trying to escape. He also shared that every single person in the village that he was in charge of was mandated to report whenever he or she was leaving the village. The netizen that shared about the cloud storage incident also said, this happened a few years back. I almost forgot some additional details. Back then, my employer was not even able to find a cook in the Xinjiang region because nearly all the people in the villages near the one that we were in have been arrested. A netizen replied, more than a decade ago, I came to realize that people in Xinjiang and Tibet were not allowed to simply pay and stay at hotels. A netizen shared, I've heard of similar incidents that a friend in Xinjiang once shared with me. He was worried that his cell phone was being monitored at all times. He knew that he was not able to use the cloud storage, and it was even more dangerous to try to bypass the Great Firewall. For safety reasons, every time when he returns home, he would bring an old-style cell phone with him so that his messages would not be constantly checked by the security forces in Xinjiang. A netizen recalled back in 2018, a charity organization shared a post about fundraising, which said that many young Kazakh children, for some special reasons, their parents weren't living with them to take care of them, and for many, They weren't living with any relative at all. The school took on the responsibility to take care of them all. It was because of the clause about the special reasons confirmed the things that were not allowed to be told, which he was clearly referring to the genocide that's been happening in Xinjiang. Many of my friends back then shared the link to this fundraising post. And ever since that day, this fundraising project has been taken down by Tencent. And in the meantime, this incident also marked a turning point in my understanding of and attitude toward the western region of Xinjiang. This netizen was also wondering what the special reasons clause was really referring to. Why were there so many children who had no one to care for them? Where did their parents, grandparents, and relatives go? A netizen shared that my relative, who is a Han civil servant, was forced to meet and basically report to the party officials who his relatives in Xinjiang were. Every half year, he would bring flowers and rice, among other things, to live in the so-called relative's house for a few days. Earlier this year, he told me that he doesn't need to go there anymore. When I asked why, he replied, the relative that he knew has been arrested and was sentenced to 15 years in prison. A netizen shared these two pictures, which shows a person that was ordered to stay in the Xinjiang residents' homes. This netizen from Xinjiang shared that I would have never imagined that my brother and two sisters would be arrested. My brother was a reporter and editor who retired. One of my sisters owned a barber shop and the other one has been running a print shop for more than a decade. They were taken to the so-called Re-Education Training Center on March 6th of 2018 and have not been released ever since. A netizen shared that I recall that when my friend's father returned from Xinjiang, he told us that please don't ever visit Xinjiang unless you have an absolute need to. He said, one day all the grievances will be addressed and the Xinjiang people will absolutely seek revenge for the crimes committed by the party there. A netizen shared this video clip showing what happened recently on the streets of Japan.
Child, we will bring you home. You'll be a flower that sees the spring. Soon a dove flying high.